Hi, I'm Mary Jo. I've been a nurse for 51 years and I have lost over 100 pounds as a postmenopausal woman and reversed all chronic disease in my life. I was wondering, there are quite a number of physicians who are involved in research based on nutritional science. And some of the recommendations have a slightly different tone. So I wanted to examine that and see, okay, what's going on? Um, if you're saying A and you're saying B, why is that? And it's really very interesting. I happened to meet Dr. Neal Barnard this past summer, and all I can tell you is the presence of this man is a very loving, giving soul. So I want to buy everything he says, but I don't. So I had to investigate it a little bit more. Who's telling the truth? I'm not sure. But here are some thoughts. The only area of significant difference, I think, is on recommendations related to nuts and seeds. Now, there is plenty of research out there to demonstrate that nuts and seeds are a high nutrient food. In fact, your seeds probably have more nutrition per ounce than your nuts do. And I got to wondering, so why are there some differences? So when I look at Dr. Neal Barnard's work, I had this thought, and then I read his book on dementia and cognition, and it seems to me that my thoughts were actually correct. Who would know? And that is to say, if you're eating a high nutrient, and I always emphasize high nutrient, anybody can eat a plant-based style and fill their dietary portfolio with white flour and sugar, which is not what true plant-based eating is all about. It's all about the nutrients and the fiber. So when you look at nuts and seeds, they have a significant number of nutrients. Now, they have both omega-6s and omega-3s. Actually, your chia seeds, your flax seeds, and your hemp seeds have a significant amount of omega-3s, and walnuts. Now, all your tree nuts have a certain amount of omega-6s. And this is not the end of the world, because any nutritional textbook will tell you there are 2 essential fatty acids. That means this is a nutrient that you have to ingest, that your body doesn't just make it. So omega-6s is a type of fatty acid that's very prevalent in the standard American diet, in your animal products and your processed foods. So most Americans tend to get little, if any, omega-3s and a very high ratio of omega-6s. So I got to wondering about Dr. Barnard, because he doesn't seem to be very concerned that people get adequate omega-3s. Now, this is his stance, and this is true. Vegetables, fruits, legumes, guess what? They all have some omega-3s in them. Now, this is a very small amount, perhaps a trace amount. So, what is the thinking? Well, whether you have omega-6s or omega-3s or both, there is a conversion enzyme that allows that which you absorb to be elongated to produce other fatty acids, such as gamma-linoleic acid or EPA or DHA, depending upon whether you're looking at omega-6 or omega-3s. And it's these elongated nutrients that actually do the vital work to keep the body safe. Isn't that interesting? EPA and DHA are particularly known for cognition, memory, neurogenesis. Gamma-linoleic acid is important for like skin, if your skin's really dry, or your hair or your nails, and it seems to really help in those kinds of situations. So they are both required. Now, if your body has tons of omega-6s in them and few or no omega-3s in them, or let's say very few omega-3s, you're using the same conversion enzyme for changing and elongating the omega-6 as you do for the omega-3. So does it not make sense that when you have more omega-6s, the competition is high and the omega-6s win out over the conversion enzyme, and therefore you have diminished production of DHA and EPA from the omega-3s because the conversion enzyme is being, shall we say, channeled into the omega-6s. So that if you avoid animal products and processed foods and you eat, your greens and your nuts and your beans and fruit, you're going to get a greater amount, not a large amount, if you will, of omega-3s that now have an opportunity to successfully compete for the conversion enzyme to create DHA and EPA. I just thought, wow, that's just such an amazing thought. Now, I know that my friend Dr. Fuhrman, I hope Dr. Fuhrman doesn't mind my saying it like that because I actually never met the man in person, but I am a fabulous admirer of him. The research he cites just makes so much sense to me. So I can see nuts and seeds as significant for brain health and cardiac health, and that you still need some omega-6s and some omega-3s in your diet. Now, it's interesting because in the population Dr. Fuhrman treats, he has seen a lot of situations where people have negligible omega-3s available to them, and therefore they are at risk for essential tremor, Parkinson's, dementia. He even cites some very low-fat vegans of the past who actually could be denoted to have had this problem. Now, here's the deal. I think both of these doctors are wonderful and have great and brilliant ideas. And does it not make sense that we should be able to convert omega-3s in a plant-based diet according to our need and provide ourselves with perhaps adequate DHA and EPA? However, does everybody have that opportunity? When someone begins to develop neurological symptoms of Parkinson's or essential tremor or dementia even, then giving that person a higher dose omega-3 in their diet or by supplement, the research does not hold true that it changes the situation. So that is to say, if omega-3s are protective to the brain for those of us who are steadfastly becoming older, moment to moment, is it a better idea to make sure we have enough omega-3s on board by perhaps doing some small, simple supplementation? Now, there was also, in terms of fatty acids and fish oil, there was a study, and people in that will cite that study, and they were giving very large amounts of fish oil to people. So with very large amounts of fish oil, there was some negative consequences. But another part of the study identified that if this person who was receiving fish oil had little or no omega-3s available in their diet or their ability to convert to DHA and EPA, that giving them the fish oil actually improved outcomes. But excessive amounts, you're going the other direction. It's so funny. We like to think, okay, this is a healthy choice. So instead of just having one, we want 15 to 2,000. I mean, isn't that the way it is? Here is a cookie. This is the healthiest cookie I could possibly make for you. Does that mean it is a health treat? Does that mean that you should eat 20 of them every day? Absolutely not. Now, you want to take 20 handfuls of greens, you go for it. But no matter, a cookie is a cookie is a cookie. So, what I'm identifying is simply that more is not always better. So, what do you think? Do we require omega 3 supplementation? Nobody is talking about omega 6 supplementation because it does seem that no matter what your dietary style is, people get an adequate amount of omega 6s. But do people get an adequate amount of omega 3s? Because of where I am in terms of age, and also, unfortunately, I have had such a long period of time of eating a standard American diet. I don't want to overdo anything, but there are a few things I want to err on the side of caution. So I have elected to take a DHA algae low dose omega 3s most days when I remember to take it. It has to be refrigerated, otherwise it could become rancid easily. You know, that's the problem with fish oils, is that they're easily become rancid by the time you purchase it, let alone ingest it. So you kind of have to be careful about the product that you are purchasing. Should, excuse me, everybody have some sort of fatty acid supplementation? Probably not. Now, the one thing I find a little bit disturbing is that I can go to my provider and I can get all this cholesterol and blood sugar and electrolyte testing. I probably get a CBC once a year. And nothing wrong in all that. It's fine. However, what's really important to sustaining my health, if health organizations were interested in sustaining my health, well, it would seem to me that that which is most important is not my cholesterol level, but rather probably my omega 3 index. How about my B12? How about vitamin D? How much vitamin D do I have? Do I have adequate iodine and zinc? Those are the kinds of things people should be checking on. What about my antioxidant score? I think it's probably fine because I've noticed that even in my feet, my skin is pink. So I think my antioxidant score would be relatively high. How about telomere length? Wouldn't that be an interesting thing to find out? And there's a test they can do on white blood cells. But are any of these tests to identify health, well-being, and nutritional status a norm in the United States? And unfortunately, they do not seem to be. Now, at one point in time, it looked like Medicare was glad to pay for any blood test, no matter what. And they have changed. At least my provider told me, I said, what I'm really interested in is vitamin D3, B12, and omega-3 index. That's what I'm really interested in to secure my health and well-being. And of course, I just like to know what my antioxidant score and my telomere length is. Not that I absolutely have to. But to do any of these types of tests, I have to pay for it. And so I have to really think about that. And what I need to do is research some laboratories and see what it would cost to be able to accomplish that. So I don't know whether I'm making any sense today or not, but I just know I had to get moving and stop reading all these doctors and talk about what is different in the plant-based community related to recommendations. And the amount of fat in the diet seems to be the biggest area of contention. Dr. Esselstyn in the early 2000s wrote a book on reversing heart disease, and his stance was get rid of saturated fat in the diet. Nobody needs it. The body makes its own cholesterol. You don't have to ingest it. So if you ex-nay processed foods and you no longer imbibe in animal products, then you take care of a lot of that. But as I read his entire book, he wanted very low to no saturated fat in the diet. So he did not recommend avocados or nuts. However, he said, if you want some nuts, walnuts is your best choice. And he did say flaxseed and chia seeds have some nutritional benefits to them. So in the world of nuts, one has to be cautious because they are calorically dense, and so you have to limit how many you ingest. To say that they're good doesn't mean if a fourth cup, Dr. Michael Greger says you should have a fourth cup of nuts and seeds, which is one serving in his book, How Not to Die, and that's a daily recommendation. Dr. Fuhrman recommends 1 to 1.5 ounces depending upon the person, and more nuts and seeds if they're very athletic and active type of person. So it's going to change from person to person. Dr. Neal Barnard tends to say you really don't need the nuts and seeds. They're calorically dense. Why do you want to eat them? That's at least what I'm getting. He believes that you will get enough omega-3s if you pay attention to the nutrient density of your diet in terms of greens, beans, and fruits. There you go. There's a plethora of recommendations out there. What do? Well, I tell you what, I try to be careful because if I eat too many nuts, I gain weight. That's just the way it is. The metabolism of my age is not the best and brightest thing in the world, though. I find that the more I exercise, it allows me a little wiggle room. I try very hard not to eat free nuts and seeds, but I do utilize them in some recipes. Sometimes, not always, I'll put them in dressings I make for a salad or a sauce I make for vegetables because I want to keep the amount. I think I should have some every day, but the amount should be relatively low. I'm very concerned about omega-3 index, and you're probably just fine. So I do take a supplement, which is a very low dose supplement, and it just makes me feel like I am protecting my health. Remember, a little bit might be all you require. A lot is not necessarily better. Well, there you go. I should wrap up this conversation because who knows how long I have been ranting and raving in front of my computer. This is kind of fun sometimes to sit here and talk to the universe. Anyway, oh my goodness, I thank you so much for your time and your attention. I hope there is something in this that will service you because this should be all about you. So with so much love and appreciation in my heart and gratitude for all who you are and what you do for the rest of us, please take great care of you, and goodbye from Nurse Mary Jo. Goodbye.